I'm going to call this meeting to order. Ann, if you could just show for the record, there are 4 commissioners present. Commissioner Sheffer, Schlosser, and Byrne are absent. Commissioner Byrne may show up mid to late part of the meeting, but there are 4 present. And also want to make everybody note of the fact that we have received a number of letters today that are in the packet, and those letters are in reference to the proposed 3% hotel accommodations tax. And I think everybody has had those to read. And I know there are a number of people in the audience representing those letters as well as those organizations. Also, you should have something about the restroom proposals, and I think we'll go over that with the outside contractor on that when the city manager wants to move forward.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Please excuse my tardiness. I had to deal with a personnel matter. Thank you for waiting. So I thought just to start this meeting off, this is our 6th budget meeting, which we normally start in January, which we did. Just to follow up on the last meeting we had just 2 weeks ago, I brought EDIS folks, Rick DiSabatino and Jim DiGuglielmo here to enlighten the commissioners on the continued discussion of the 3 restroom enhancements, the spruce ups as I call them, and they have a brief presentation that hopefully I thought would answer some questions that Commissioner Mills and the other commissioners might have had. So if I can ask Rick and Jim to come up and explain their presentation.
Great, thank you.
And just for clarification purposes also, this is the 3 restrooms, Rehoboth Avenue restroom, Delaware Avenue restroom, and Baltimore Avenue restroom. We have in the current capital improvement plan, the 5-year capital improvement plan for work to be done on each of these restrooms starting this afternoon, if not Monday, and concluding by May 15th. So we have a tight window to get this work done if, in fact, we're going to continue with this.
So you have the information?
So everyone has the information.
Okay.
The public has the information.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You want to use the document?
Yeah, we don't really need to. I mean,
so you just place it on here, and it'll show right up there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see how it goes. All right. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We were asked several weeks ago to provide and work with the city to provide a concept budget for the commissioners' report that Commissioner Mills put together, and that was the impetus of the beginning of the refresh, as we call it, or spruce up of the bathroom facilities and the changing facilities on the boardwalk. We put that report together, which you all have a copy of that, and then we also put a proposal together to refresh the bathrooms, and we can put that up. Is that what you'd like to do? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
The original document that we did was in response to Commissioner Mills and his committee needs for the bathrooms. It was a very definitive, very well-written report and a lot there. We then consulted with, on a minimal basis, Davis, Bowen, and Friedel to see what we could potentially do. So there's 2 projects here. One is, where to do this?
She'll.
You can do that?
Mm-hmm. She'll do it.
This was a response to our interpretation of your committee's report. We did some preliminary work and went out and saw what we could do that was minimally invasive to your places, such as the Baltimore going up. That's the only facility that you had that we could potentially go up, and it morphed into Delaware Avenue, putting the family changing rooms, but addressing your concerns. We did that conceptual work for the city to that point. Then we were approached, as Rick stated, to help with a fast track, something we could do this year just to make it more appealing to the public. So what we did, we took out of the report the easy things for the public to see, which was the floor. So we have put together and received proposals for new epoxy flooring, new epoxy wall coatings on the floor. And I wanted to emphasize with those things, while it's a cost today, it's still a what we would call a value engineering thing. You may pay, a lot of people think of value engineering as a reduction. You're going to pay money to put that floor in and paint it this year. However, next spring, you'll also reap the reward of not having to redo the walls. You just have to basically clean it because it's such a hard, durable finish. So our spruce up scope of work consisted of new epoxy flooring, new epoxy walls. We were putting in a new HVAC, just heat only, in the Rehoboth Avenue that is your year-round function. There was a concern about the look of the exhaust fans. They're oscillating fans on the wall, so we proposed to take them out and use a hidden system that'll just have ducts to circulate the air, so you won't see those dusty fans. We were replacing the sinks with a solid surface, just a regular Corian. Taking out the bathroom partition doors. Since your bathroom partitions are masonry, you want to leave them, they're durable. All you have in there is a door. So we have proposed to use phenolic doors on there. The stainless steel, as you can see, today isn't the stainless steel of old. I mean, they're corroded. So we have plastic, basically, doors in there. We had the exhaust, the floors, the walls. We were converting what lighting was already not converted to LED. And we also have a proposal to replace your doors, your entrance doors, to fiberglass frames, stainless steel hardware, and fiberglass doors. I know there's going to be a question, so I'll answer the question before you answer it. If you go, I'm calling that phase one of this spruce up. The next phase would be is, do you want to address the report, and how do we want to do it? Can we tell you today that you want to have to lose every bit of it? You're not going to lose every bit of it, but I'm not going to tell you you may not lose a small piece. Keep in mind that the new products that we put in can be repurposed if you were, but our vision of this project doesn't show any interference with your existing bathroom stalls. We're not going to change them. It would be an addition to these bathrooms. And
let me just add to that all these meetings were conducted with the city's personnel, of course, city manager, and I apologize, I don't know Chuck's last name. Chuck Schneider was involved with these discussions. So this menu of work was agreed upon that this is what this would be, what could be done quickly for the city with competitive proposals from contractors, and because the city needs the requirement to try to get this done before summertime. Did you have a question? Okay.
I left out one piece of work, and the other plumbing, the only plumbing work that will be done, none of the porcelain fixtures, the urinals, sinks, or toilets, the hand sinks will be removed. They will be staying in place, but however, we will be replacing the valves that you cannot see that are in the chases in the back because there's been a lot of maintenance issues. So, I mean, it's basically a architectural cosmetic upgrade is what you're doing with a very fast time frame.
And the next phase was that's purely a report, and that's up to the city what they want to do with that. So.
Do you want to touch on the budget for this so the commissioners are aware of the revisions that were made?
This is the revised budget, and I believe the original budget was $750,000. It's reduced to $60,000 because of value engineering that we went through with HVAC and Chuck Schneider. So there was a couple other things that he said we don't really need to do that now. And in there's the breakdown. There's a line item that is probably it's not properly stated. It's a bricks and sticks. That's a contingency for the work. That it's the city's money. So if it's not being spent, unless there's something that would occur that would require that. And part of that is making sure the scopes are nailed down with each segment of work with each trade. There's also a contingency, which is the city's money, of $17,000, which is the city's control. If the city decide, well, we want to put brand new fixtures or we want to change this, there's some dollars allowed to that, and that's all. That has nothing to do with the contractors or us being the representative for the city. And there's also a labor cost that we have in there. If we don't utilize all that labor, those dollars are returned to the city. And if we use more, that's on us. So that's our bad planning. So that's basically the numbers that we broke it out by bathroom.
So basically, Rick, you're saying your projection is 680 versus the 750 that we had before, based on financial engineering, whatever you've done, and then with these contingencies and whatnot, conceivably that 680 could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 550.
Correct.
Plus or minus.
Right. If you don't use it,
if we don't use any of the contingency funds.
Yeah, and we have a pretty good plan with Chuck Schneider and Kevin, and going back and forth. We met a couple times to review that. I was not the project manager. Our project manager, he's lucky. He's on a ship out in the ocean someplace. So, but Jim has been involved with quite a few of the meetings.
I just want to clarify. I think I understood you to say that you're not really able to tell us at this time, out of whether this turns out to be $500,000 or $680,000, what portion of it might be at risk with additional modifications or design.
Right. Well, at first understanding of that, of the work, which is a concept that was developed with the report and the discussions. We don't believe that it will be affected, but the engineering has to be finalized. There may be, because of the expansion of the addition, there may be some structural issues that require a column that may damage the floor. But we don't see that. And there are also the setbacks with the additions. We haven't studied that. That if you're allowed by code to put those additions onto the.
That's part of the next phase.
Right, and that's nothing to do with the freshen up of the.
But the reason the reason the contingencies are there is in a project that has to be done in May 15th.
I'm sorry.
It has to be done in May 15th. As an example, when we go in to change out this air handler, if we're to find there's some type of deficiency, structural deficiency in the building, for us to come back here next month would be impossible to be done May 15th. So these contingency dollars are there for those type of unforeseens, and it's just faster to the process. If we have to do that work, obviously that will be presented to you with full backup. No, I mean, we don't get markup on this stuff. So, I mean, we're your owner's rep. You would see that we had to put a steel beam in because there was a wood rot in the ceiling to support the thing. It just fast tracks the job. You may come to us at the end and say you want who knows what. I mean, some fancy light in there, some fancy fan. It's just a means to expedite that process with your approval. We don't have the authority to spend it. Contingency dollars have to be approved by someone other than us, but they're there. And if we use them, we use them. And if they don't, they never leave the city's funds.
Thank you.
I'd just like to review very quickly. I chair the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, and let's just review one of their recommendations with respect to restrooms. Was restroom sufficiency? Do we have enough stalls? Do we have enough buildings? was a question we put out that we asked for further evaluations. But our recommendation specifically came down to the desire for one or more family restrooms. Those are bigger restrooms that multiple people can use at the same time to assist each other. That we don't have that now. And we've gotten letters, I think the chamber may have gotten letters on that we need to accommodate them people. And I agree wholeheartedly. So that's one of the things. We were asked, our recommendation said, let's consider at the same time, if we're looking at new buildings, renovating, whatever, let's look at changing rooms. Not changing rooms on the beach. If you recall, our report said that that likely was not a good idea because people want to be co-located with water source so they can clean off and then change their clothes. And there's other reasons too that I'm not going to go into right now. And then the other thing was maintenance of our restrooms and stuff, as well as a separate recommendation that the Beach Patrol had asked for a second floor observation deck on their building, and the recommendation from the committee was if indeed you decide to put a family restroom or do renovations at the Baltimore Avenue station, then that's a good candidate for putting a second floor on for the Beach Patrol, move them up there, and then fill the void down below that used to be the Beach Patrol area with family restrooms, et cetera. Now, wearing my commissioner's hat, I'm interested in future planning. What's our vision for the future? Are we going to accommodate it? Are we going to do anything? Are we spending our money properly and responsibly? And all that kind of melds into them. I'm not quite comfortable with this project. One of the things that I have been pushing for from the beginning is to get a higher comfort level on planning far enough ahead to accommodate heated, year-round family restrooms, as well as a second floor for the Beach Patrol, maybe changing rooms at the same time without ripping out the current renovations. Now, I found that your plans that you supplied that we just got this past week, we didn't have them before, are very helpful. You have the Delaware Avenue restroom up there, for instance, that has, I think, a good start of a plan, but personally, I think the commissioners maybe need to talk about it more to see whether we want to do changing rooms or not, because they need to be co-located, in my mind, with attendants. They can only be used when attendants are on the duty in that area, as well as some other things. And I notice you do have two family restrooms in the front, which look probably to be adequate size, again, this particular restroom and what you drew there, I can be fairly comfortable, I think, that if we renovate the men's and women's room and then there's a third auxiliary restroom behind it that goes for men or women, depending on the need, I can feel comfortable that if we renovate that, we probably aren't going to destroy that in the future. However, there are other things there. The Main Street that's run the kiosk has been asking for a railing, hand railing to get down the stairs at the flagpole. They've been asking for that for years. I think it's time that we do that. However, to do that, you've got to go into the substructure. And we've reported to the city manager some time ago or whenever recently that the carpenter shop indicates that some of the substructure they believe on those steps is in dire need of replacing, inspection, whatever. So I'm still looking at, economy of scale. Should we bundle this with other work? So go to the Rehoboth Ave, and again, you've got your family restrooms there, but are they going to be heated? Is a question. What are we doing for the heated ones? Go to the restroom at Rehoboth Avenue is probably the best candidate for heated family restrooms year-round, but there's limited spot there except on the south side where the Dolphin is and the patio is. Maybe we need to consume that, but I think that we have to have further discussion, possibly up here, on whether we want to do that or not. But again, that one I think is the best candidate for year-round family restrooms that are heated. Go to the Baltimore Avenue thing, and you've got that hand-drawn sketch that I almost can't understand some of it, but it looks like you've got two family restrooms in the front, You've taken the women's restroom and bumped it over to where the beach patrol locker room is, and put the auxiliary restroom, if you will, in the middle, which seems like it might be a good idea. But I question, where is the walk-up window for the first aid station and the information center? That's two centers there that are walk-up for the beach patrol, and so again, if you're going to put the family restrooms there or anywhere, where are the ones that are going to be heated and available year-round? And while I'm a little more comfortable with the Delaware Avenue one, I'm not at all comfortable with this in that I'm not confident that when it comes down to it and all these things are discussed, that we don't say it's cheaper to tear that thing down and build it brand new. Then we will have wasted all the money.
And to explain these sketches, I mean, Baltimore has the two, and these are just a real quick, it's our interpretation of your report. This is one, I'm sure, of 15 sketches to come to answer your concerns. Because, I mean, we if you move forward, we really need, you've been involved with the design process. We were asked to minimally look at this thing and get some ideas of what we can do. So this is just round one to be followed by many, as you say. I mean, there's things that, some of the things that you wanted weren't addressed in the report, you know, but if we were to get to that point, we would sit down and incorporate that into the plan and keep going. This is just a real quick, what we see you can do with it.
And I think that's what my problem is, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I want something more deliberate. I would prefer something more deliberate, planning ahead, put in the 5-year CIP so we know what we're doing. Even if we have to defer this 1 year and do interim spruce ups that are less than what they are, I'm leaning that direction.
And we did reduce this at the recommendation of Chuck. We had heat and air conditioning in all of the bathrooms. We were going to replace all the systems, and we were told to pull that out and just heat your year-round.
Again, that doesn't give me the comfort level that we've examined everything fully for the 3 restrooms, and we're going to get the final product we want, even if it takes 1 or 2 more years or something.
And again, the budget that we prepared can be a la carte. That's why it's shown in, you know, by division. One of the things I didn't mention was the showers. You wanted to convert the foot showers based on your findings to shower towers. So we have that priced in there, 6 of them. That's also part of that. But I mean, these lines, if you went with the painting and the floor, you obviously could do that and not do the flush valves for the bathroom accessories. Can you live with the stainless steel doors? I guess you could. It would kind of take away from the epoxy, you know, the nice floor and walls. But I mean, I think some of this has to be part of your yearly work anyway that you typically do in the spring.
Well, the other thing that gives me a little pause is I can't remember all what they are, but there were a few things in your report that said we may not be able to get them in time. And to me, if we can't do the full package, then maybe we do need to step back and look at all these other things. And not only that, but also bid it out so that we're being fiduciarily responsible on getting the best price over the program that we're doing now.
Yeah, we have proposals, hard proposals for this work. The statement, we since found since that email that the fiberglass doors is what is a long lead item because they're custom made, the entry doors. A lot of the bathroom stall partitions are. We're confident now that when we're cut loose to do it, if it's in the time frame and the schedule, that we can get those. Of course, you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for the fiberglass, but we've allowed for that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the cost, and I'm not worried about the $80,000 you took out. If we think we need them, that's fine. I'm more worried and interested in the end product, or in 1, 2, or 3 years, we're going to get the end product we want without treading water, going backwards or anything. You know, and back to the bidding, you know, you bid out to your selected bidders, but that may not. we may get twice the number of bidders if we went out on the market and bid it or something. I'm just, the $750,000 was a shock, and I'm still not quite over it, frankly, you know.
Would you please address the issue of the vendors that you did bid this out to?
Yeah, we went out to the most, first we went to the most responsive, what we call responsive bidders, the ones that we work with a lot that have very good pricing, but they have the ability to meet this schedule. Right now, anybody that's having any construction work done knows it's hard to get pricing. But we have, as an example, I guess I can say the names. I mean, we are working with Harry Caswell. However, we have other backup numbers to validate his number. We always do that. But we know that Harry Caswell does a lot of work for the city and can get this done. I mean, I can go out and get you a lot cheaper prices, and they won't get done until November. It doesn't do us any good. So we go to, I don't want to say select contractors, but the most responsive contractors that we utilize.
Yes.
But if you go to, if you get cheaper prices and you have a longer time frame to do the project, then that could be a rationale for postponing it a year and doing some things. And the other thing is that what scares me is Sharon mentioned we've got a very tight window for this to get it done, and then Jimmy, you indicated we need to fast track this, and I understand that, but those are caution flags for me, that's all.
So I would just add my comments. My charge was to look at the restrooms and to spruce them up. That's what I did here. I worked with EDIS for several months here. The only thing, excuse me, I heard for the past year, Commissioner Mills, was the fact that the bathrooms were not ready for last season. Nothing's been done, so I assume that means they're not ready for this season. I spent that time working with the professionals, working with the professional staff to get the numbers here, to get them down as much as possible, and to provide that spruce up, if you will, of the 3 restrooms. We did that. I feel as though my job is complete. I'm confident that the work will be done by May 15th. I've had several conversations with my staff and with EDIS. And if at this point the commissioners feel as though they want to remove these from the budget, certainly I'm happy to do that.
Well, I'd like to make a comment on all of this. I'm happy with this proposal. The only thing, and I think we've been talking about this all along, is that we would hope that the spruce up would stand on its own, and next year, whatever else we plan to do, whether it's putting a second floor in Baltimore Avenue, it wasn't going to require any type of tearing out what had already been done. That was my main concern, and I think that that's what I understand in conversations that I've had with the city manager, that the case is you don't look to tear out anything major. There might be little odds and ends, perhaps, but the restrooms are in a deplorable shape, in my opinion, and they do need a spruce up, and I think we can't wait to do that. But I also understand where Commissioner Mills is coming from in terms of the planning. These types of diagrams and information, given that Commissioner Mills is the boardwalk chair, this information should have been provided to him, or he should. I think you've been involved to some extent, but at the same time, he wants to be comfortable that we will have an end product that we're all going to feel proud, you know. So I think we need to move forward with this plan and not to put it off, but with the comfort that you're not going to be tearing things out next year to make this all work.
Well, and I think that was addressed in the beginning, if you'd like to hear that, you know, a little fine-tuned. But I also wanted to point out that in the very beginning of the discussions with EDIS, I made it clear that the budget would only allow for the spruce up. In the future, the Beach and Boardwalk Committee was very much interested in changing rooms, in family restrooms, in the overlook, if you will, for the beach patrol on Baltimore Avenue. Those just quick and dirty sketches were provided based on that conversation. What would be necessary for the next step would be to engage an architect for a design, to look at each parcel to see what could be actually constructed with the space that's city property. So that's why you see the hand-drawn, the sketches. But, you know, it's important for me that you note that, you know, I followed the charge again in saying that the future, we would be looking at this, but we had efficiency issues, we had cost issues, and timing issues in order to get this ready for May 15th. So I think everything you're saying is, you know, what I propose to do starting very soon to get ready for next year. This is, again, just phase one. So
I hear you, and I appreciate all the work that you've done on this. I just heard that the next step is to get the architect, and for me, we should have flipped them, because we've done our homework perhaps on the Delaware Avenue restroom, not so much on Rehoboth, and almost nothing on Baltimore, for my satisfaction anyhow. But you know, if we want to move forward, we believe me, we absolutely need to do something. I mean, even if we aborted 100%, we would still need to do some minimal spruce ups to get through the summertime.
And may I, excuse me, we will do whatever the city wants. The proposal was, again, it was a conversation, to start that conversation. If we can help that, fine. If not, you know, we'll do what, you know, the city wants. And with the proposal to do the fresh up, the spruce up of the restrooms, if there's portions of this that don't want to be done, they can be, you know, you can do it, like Jim was saying, you can do portions of it, and we can be totally out of it. I mean, if you want us to, you know, we don't want to think that we're pressuring the city, because we live here too.
So, Commissioner Mills, I just need a quick clarification. On this item that's on the screen, that was on the, is now on the screen, there are 12 items under the specifications section, and I'm not counting showers. That brings it down to 11. Of those 11 items, when you use the term an interim spruce up, was that a subsection of these 11?
No, I think for me, and if we did an interim thing, you would have to at least address the rust on the stalls, and then I don't know the condition of the floors and the wall, but if they needed a painting, then maybe that would happen also. I would put off, if we're going to put it off, then I would put off epoxying the floor until we know what we're doing. So.
Any further on that? Just going along those ideas, and along your idea about having the architect, it seems to me the only situation that I can see from a picture perspective is a substantial architectural move at the Baltimore place. I mean, is there, if you want to go to phase 2 in Delaware Avenue, is that a substantial to get to your drawing, which is, you know, a much better drawing than the Baltimore? Is that a substantial move from the spruce up? I mean, would phase 2, if we were to accommodate all of this stuff?
And again, Commissioner Mills' report, we based our sketches, and we did embrace Davis, Bowman, and Friedel in a minimal capacity, are on our interpretations of your report. Your report really needs to be defined before you could go to the next phase. As you brought up these little things, you know, the other people. What we did was just do the inside. I don't think, short of, and somebody mentioned, maybe we'll tear the whole thing down. You know, my interpretation looking at that is you don't need to get rid of that. I think we can add what you want onto it. Am I going to sit here and tell you, I don't know, you may change your mind in 6 months that what we put in this spring isn't going to be affected, next fall. I can't say that, I can speak for most of these that will add to the outside. The Baltimore Avenue is the unforeseen, and I'm kind of confident that you'll be able to go up there. Am I going to tell you may not have to put a pier in the middle somewhere, a helical pier, and cut a 2-foot square out and, drill an auger pile in there? I can't tell you that today, not knowing what you want to put up there. But it looks to be sufficient.
Like I said, I think the Baltimore plan gives me a comfort level that if you do the renovations, that we're not going to booger them up in the future. I think the same thing would apply to the Rehoboth Avenue restrooms. It would be an addition if we even did anything. The lack of comfort levels, the Baltimore, but I feel comfortable that I have established a foundation that a year from now, if you tear down that Baltimore building, I'll be able to say, I told you so.
Well, given that, should we just do the spruce up on Rehoboth Avenue in Delaware, and then just paint and scrape on Baltimore?
If we weren't, I think your start timeline is next week.
Monday.
Yeah. Okay. So if the start time was 2 months from now, I'd say let's get together with DBF and have them evaluate further the Baltimore Avenue restroom to make sure they're in agreement with the hand sketch or whatever, but there's no time to do that. So and the frustrating thing is Baltimore Avenue is the #1 priority in my mind for the spruce up. So it almost seems like we either defer them all for economy of scale and bid them out later, or we just bite the bullet and go for them so that we can accomplish renovating the Baltimore one prior to summer.
Well,
in the bigger packet that we submitted earlier in the week, and we submitted it back a few months ago, we also went out and got proposals to provide temporary facilities if you want to add to your facilities. Tow-up trailers is what they are, with a couple stalls. You can get them with 2 up to 10. They're very expensive. Yeah. We had talked to Sharon about you may even want to consider purchasing one. Then you could store it in your yard and move it out for the parade and make provisions to hook it up just like a camper. But that's an option too. Yeah.
Well, from my perspective, as I look at this project as well as our entire budget, I think there are things, and this is a perfect example, that in my mind need to be done and probably needed to be done a couple of years ago, if not earlier. I think that's the case pretty much so across our budget, across our CIP. I think, again, this is probably phase 1, and I think there are things that we need to do as we move forward as well, not just on the bathrooms going forward, but other projects around the city. But the bathroom is a perfect example. I think, your point is well taken about planning. I think do this spruce up, get through the summer, and maybe start, talk to Davis and Bowen about the possibilities of the next step. But I think there are so many things in our budget, this being one of them, that need to be done as soon as possible, and that's where the hard decisions come. And I think this is a perfect example of something that we do have to do, because we're asking so much of the people that are going to end up paying for this, that I think we need to take care of their customers as much as possible, our residents as much as possible, the visitors, the businesses, and make our residents and our property owners proud of what the city of Rehoboth looks like. Anything else?
No, just a fine point. So the scope of work would be all 11 items that are listed.
I don't think that there's, Commissioner Mills, tell me if you're otherwise. I don't know that there's nothing in here huge in any of those 11 things that look like, if you take out something, we save a lot of money.
Right.
But it's to me, it looks like those things are the spruce up. Those aren't, huge construction situations for the future. And if we can, try to keep our eye on and making sure that as much as possible, our plan is to go to some kind of a phase 2, and not to be tearing things down. If the building has to come down because there's something underneath it that we couldn't figure out beforehand, those are the things you run into. But I think, as you said, I think the Rehoboth Avenue, I think the Delaware Avenue are definitely structurally pretty easy to work with. It's the Baltimore Avenue, and it's coming up with a second floor and a little bit of expansion there. And I think that's the one that's going to cost more in phase 2. But hopefully that cost doesn't have anything to do with things being torn down or the things that we put in being torn out. Great.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Did you want me to proceed with the
Yeah.
summary?
Yeah, just your summary would be
Okay.
great. And then I'll go into it.
So again, I would direct your attention to the budget highlights, March 2019. Again, this is a presentation of a balanced budget, including 2% raises for staff, depending upon their performance evaluation. Residential trash, increasing residential trash $25 per resident both in the annual seasonal rate and the non-seasonal rate. There is a projected 30% increase in water for all water users, a 60% increase in wastewater rates. This is reflective of the Abrahams report, you'll recall. The rate study working group is hopefully will be concluding their recommendations in the next 30 days and be able to recommend a different rate to the commissioners, hopefully a decreased rate, but that's has not been determined yet. There have been some issues with meetings because of individuals being out of town on vacation, whatever. So those meetings will start up again the week after next. There's also, this budget reflects a 50% property tax increase for Rehoboth Beach property owners, and also reflects a 3% accommodations tax, as we've been talking about for the past 6 weeks. So any changes, of course, to that would be a discussion of the commissioners. But as far as I'm concerned, we've had many different iterations of this. I'm happy to present a balanced budget to you. That's certainly a main part of my job. And I'm very proud of the staff who worked very hard on this with me. And I'd offer any questions here for you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you again to your staff and Evan and Kevin and Bert and across the board for putting this together. I know this has been a trying process over the last 6 budget meetings, as well as all the way back into September when you first started asking for department heads for their budgets and whatnot. As I said before, as I look across the budget, as well as the needs of the city, and then our capital improvement plan for this year, again, the needs of the city, there are a substantial number of things that we have included. There are a number of things that we've left out. But one of the things that we had to do was, as commissioners, is try to figure out how to pay for the needed upgrades, the needed repairs, just like the spruce up of the bathroom. And as you mentioned, we talked about a property tax increase. We talked about a 3% hotel tax and various different other things to get us to that point. And I don't think this is the end of it. I think this is probably a continuation. As you recall, last year we put into place for this year's budget an increase, 100% increase, but a 3% to 6% on the rental tax, which helped out our budget last year, and it's going to continue to help out our budget and the things that we need as we move forward. the property tax that we talked about is a substantial one, but as mentioned by a number of the people up here at this desk, there hadn't been much of anything done from a property tax perspective for years, and unfortunately, we were keeping property taxes unusually low relative to other communities like ours as a percentage of the budget. One of the things we did come up with, and I know a number of the people are in the audience today to speak towards the 3% accommodations tax, which is in place in a variety of different municipalities around the state, and the closest one being Bethany. We have put together a proposal to go in front of our legislators. It did not get in January, and we're hoping it'll be in front of our legislators sooner rather than later. But you know, based upon the letters that we've received recently, the comments from many of the hoteliers, proprietors of hotels, owners of hotels, about their concerns about what happens as we move into the season real quickly, and all of a sudden this tax is put on their bills as of July 1st. Well, this is similar to what we went through last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago, when we talked about the rental tax. I think it was 2 years ago, in that the city manager had put a rental tax increase on the budget, and it was agreed by the commissioners that it was too late in the process to ask the people to go back to their renters, and you know, your bill's not going to be this, it's going to be a little bit higher. And so we postponed that until January 1st so that we could get out more information to people, as well as you know, on their bills. Well, I don't know that we will be able to get this proposal, and again, the proposal isn't in front of the legislators to have a specific percentage. It is a proposal for the city to implement an accommodations tax. And so, given the nature of what we've heard from the community, the hotelier community, and speaking with our representatives, I don't know that it's going to be able to get on the docket for this year. And so this kind of comes into play my plan B that I spoke about at the last budget meeting, in that if this doesn't get in front of the legislators this year, and I really don't think it will, and I don't think it would behoove our community to do that this year, but with plans on doing it in the possibility of getting it in front of the legislators before the end of the year, with the idea of focusing on January 1st, 2020, much like we did with January 1st, 2018 on the rental tax, would be to postpone the 3% accommodations tax on this year's budget, and much as we did two years ago to shore up the budget, dip into our reserves, that actually what we dipped into 2 years ago has been replenished in that capital fund, and do the same this year, because I don't, just as we've been talking about the restrooms, I don't see anything on the budget, I don't see anything on the capital improvement plan that we can cut back on this year. We've already cut back. I think the original capital improvement plan was over $5 million, and I think this is only about 2.4. And so we've already cut back a lot. We cut back a lot last year, and we're paying for it this year. So my suggestion would be to postpone the implementation of in the budget itself, the 3% accommodations tax, and we go to the general fund reserves for approximately this amount. And again, I think, I'm not sure, does this have the most recent estimate from EDIS or the previous estimate for the bathrooms? I think it's got the previous one.
The 680,000 is the most. Oh, the budget.
Yes.
The budget reflects the 760.
That's what I thought.
But
okay.
Well,
So the amount that we may have to go in, suggested go into the reserves would be less.
well, and I'm in agreement and amenable to that, Mayor. But I want to go through my spiel real quick. If you remember back at the very first budget meeting, it mentioned the hotel tax in there, and I asked for it to be taken out because I thought it was the wrong message to be sending out to the hotel people and anybody else that we were considering it when it hadn't even gone in front of the General Assembly. And I still feel that way. So if we had gone forward with this, I would not be voting in favor of it at this time. Again, because it hadn't even been presented, introduced to the General Assembly. And I just think the sequencing is wrong. Additionally, I do believe that the timing and awareness of the hotels is something maybe we suffered on a little bit. Could have done a better job. And within that, I do want to say, I do believe that hotels should probably be paying, or hotel patrons should probably be paying something, because none of what they collect now goes directly to the city. Yes, there's some of it goes to tourism and to the beach replenishment, but I do think that some of the patrons should. What it is, I don't know, but I will say that earlier I was not in agreement with the 3%. I was more willing to go with a 1% as a test to see how much we actually brought in, to see how much we want. Because otherwise, 3% is just a number kind of thrown out there as the maximum that the state legislature will allow us to do if they approve it. So I'm kind of glad the direction this is taken, frankly. But I do agree that we need to fund our projects that we've identified, and we've done a good job, I think, identifying and culling out the unnecessary projects, and we definitely need to, I believe, go into that fund to fund the shortcoming that was anticipated in this budget by putting the 3% hotel tax in. Thank you.
Mayor, I would just clarify that the items that were removed from the CIP are all necessary. We just deferred this year, and you'll be, so there's no shock appeal next year. I know that you'll be seeing those again, because we will ramp them up from deferred to either immediate or
Yes, and
what's
from the very
necessary.
beginning of when we started talking about the budget, excuse me, there were no unnecessary things in there for capital improvements. These are things that have been needed because of deferred maintenance that over the years. And so, yeah, I believe that they're all necessary, and yes, we're going to have to fund them next year. But to also speak to the hotel tax, I agree that we really haven't communicated enough to the hotels of what our intentions were from the beginning, and it doesn't make sense at this point anyway for them to tack on some percentage. And again, we weren't, as far as to the General Assembly, we were just getting permission to be able to have a hotel tax. Didn't even mean we would ever have one necessarily, and it wasn't definite, and it wasn't necessarily going to be 3%. We could decide next year it could be 2%, it could be 1%, or it could be 3%. So I'm perfectly comfortable with taking the money out of the general fund as a loan to us, and hopefully we can replace that. But I think we'll hopefully get started earlier on from the commissioner's standpoint and from the city manager within months of talking about what we're going to need next year for the budget, and not wait too late. So perhaps the budget process will be faster next year.
Well, before I turn it to you.
Go ahead.
Along those lines, you know, I do remember last year talking about it as we came out of the budget session, that because a number of things from last year's budget were cut out from the CIP, and we're facing them now, and we're still cutting more out and pushing them. But you know, for so many years, the city's been kicking down kicking the can down the road, and it's just these things are the things that we have to face, and I think we're facing it in a very good fashion, and I appreciate your comments on both sides here, that it's just something that we're going to have to continue to do, and it's not an easy decision to make or a vote to make to implement these things. But I think I agree on the communication side, and I would suggest, I will get in touch with a few of you. I've already been in touch with a few of you, whether it's the chamber or Alex Moore has been speaking for a number of the different hoteliers, or all of you, and start the discussion process. And just like anything else, I know Sharon goes around starting around Labor Day to speak to her direct reports about the budget and what their asks for and their needs are. I think it's something that we as commissioners have to focus on this subject, because she's going to present the things that she needs. We're going to have to figure out how we can pay for it. And I think the conversations need to be had a little bit earlier. And, I should have done, gone out harder early on, and with the commissioners as well as with the public.
Sure.
And so I will suggest that as we move forward. I'm sorry.
Not at all. I concur with everything that's been said without restating it. But I do have a curiosity in the document that's online from Southern Delaware Tourism. There's a letter for all to see there, and I'm curious about the paragraph that's the second one from the bottom. It starts with, currently, the rental accommodations tax of 3% is not being collected by third-party engagement services such as VRBO, Airbnb, etc. I am under the impression that is not an accurate statement, and I need to understand whether or not I'm correct or if this letter is correct.
Oh, I was going to say,
Well,
Scott's not
I
here.
wasn't.
Ben may be able to speak to
Sure.
Southern Delaware.
So I'm happy to address that.
Can
My name
you
is
tell-
Ben Gray.
There you go.
Thank you, I'm 6'4", so I appreciate your help. I'm the chairman for Southern Delaware Tourism, and also on the board of directors for the Rehoboth Dewey Chamber of Commerce. I also represent the hotel committee here in Sussex County. And yes, so the 3% tax is not currently being collected by VRBOs and Airbnbs at this time. And it is Southern Delaware Tourism's position, and always has been in our 2016 position paper, which could also be presented to the commissioners, that we have always supported that equality between hotels and other forms of accommodations, being VRBO and Airbnb, because as of right now, they are not being forced to collect that tax, and we believe that that equality would certainly help justify the budget improvements that you're looking to do now, and that's really what we're advocating for. And that's a part of our letter, as well as part of our position paper, but it is not currently being collected by those entities.
Well, I have a question, because I used to be a VRBO in the old days, and what we did is we voluntarily collected taxes and sent it in. So is this 100% accurate to say sweepingly that nobody with VRBO or Airbnb pays taxes? I don't know.
I don't think it can be, because there are other people like yourself that did that in town. And speaking with Dennis Jenny on the staff, he's gone around looking at a lot of licenses, looking at how we collect our fees. And I'll go back to the 3% in a minute. And he seems to be very comfortable with the fact that, yes, could certain Airbnbs or VRBOs be slipping through the cracks? Possibility, but apparently relative to a number of other communities that he's looked at and made comparisons with and checked with these organizations, we're in very good shape from that perspective, collecting here within the city.
Yes, to be clear, Commissioner, it's not mandated. Yes, it is essentially on an honor system as of right now.
Which is what the
whole
entirety
city
of the city
yeah.
rental program is on the volunteer
Yeah.
program. So good or bad.
Yeah.
But
Now-
what I find interesting, I just want to read the next sentence, or if you want to read the next
Sure, go ahead.
sentence.
You go right ahead,
Oh, good.
Commissioner Mills.
On this subject, SDT would be delighted to work with the City of Rehoboth Beach to determine the scope and remedy for this problem. So I think we have an invite, and I think maybe we consider taking them up on that.
You certainly do. Absolutely. You have our full support in trying to solve this issue.
And maybe we can get Dennis together with somebody from, or maybe you, Ben,
You can use
from Southern
myself.
Delaware.
Absolutely. Happy to advocate on behalf.
Um,
Absolutely.
One thing, basically it says, currently the rental accommodations tax of 3% is not being collected by third-party engagements. Am I assuming Scott's saying the 3% tax in the city of Rehoboth is not? That's what he's implying.
That is what is,
Okay.
that is the implication of the letter.
Just
Yes,
to let you know, the rental tax is 6%.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and we're aware of that,
Okay.
yes. And we were advocating for equality in that there would be a mandated 3% in addition to that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Hopefully that clears that up. If you have any
Yes.
other questions, certainly reach out.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.
Any other comments, questions, anybody?
Not on hotel, are we,
On the budget itself?
on the budget itself, just, property tax, I think we're all on the same wavelength there. The water and wastewater rates proposed 30% and 60%. I know what the justification is for the wastewater rate to go up. Can somebody explain what is the justification for the water rate going up?
I can give you a rough, and then I'm going to give it to our professional. You know, from reading the Abrahams report, it has to do with what the recommendations by GHD for future needs in our water systems. And I think there's probably, I think it's $5 or $6 million of work that needs to be done within the next 2 or 3 years. And we don't have borrowing capacity to do that. We can't use our, you know, we can't use the line of credit that we have for the outfall because we still haven't finished that. So this would be completely kind of pay as you go. And I'll leave it to you, Kevin.
You're absolutely right, Mayor. And the 30 was the number that the Abrahams group came up with when they did the analysis. They were looking at both water and wastewater rates. And it is for the well 6 refurbishment, the updated Lynch wells, those kinds of capital projects that are in the horizon that we'll have to pay for.
Well, our billing quarter starts April 1st, I guess. So we're trying to do something by then. And yet that's not likely going to be the final rate increase because we're going to get another proposal from the rate study group. Is that right? So I guess I'm not 100% comfortable with 2 rate changes. I would rather defer the first one and make up afterwards.
Well, I mean, that was one of the reasons why we wanted the rate study group to, over the past 3 months, be able to put something in front of us. I think Kevin had hoped for something by today or at least the last workshop, but because other people not being able to make meetings, they haven't had as many meetings as they initially started having. But I think, the bills will go out as of April 1st or they go out later?
So the commercial readings and the bills are done monthly.
Monthly.
They'll be sent out towards the end of April, the beginning of May. That's why my little memorandum to you this week indicated that it's necessary, obviously, for the commissioners to vote an ordinance amendment that's encompasses the water and sewer rates. That would be on your April workshop agenda, and then 10 days later, that would be up for a vote at your April meeting in time for the bills to go out at the end of April. So that's the timeliness issue. The residential readings would be done sometime beginning middle of June, and then those bills go out then, reflecting hopefully the, well, if not these rates, 30 and 60, then the new rates by that time from the rate study group. And
again, I'm just,
No,
I just prefer not to raise the rate once and then raise the rate twice, you know, in 2 different ordinances.
Well,
Is there not a way around it by increasing the surcharge this time and the rate next time? It's kind of.
And I just would add to that the city needs to start paying that debt, and we have a timeline for that, and that's the reason we were actually going to bring it forward in the last quarter of 2018, which started in January of 19. So what we were able to do the math and postpone that until the first quarter, which is April 1.
Yeah, because the initial suggestions by Abrahams were supposed to be implemented as of January 1st.
Correct.
So there's no discussion on instead of raising the rate for this first time, raising the surcharge?
Well,
Bit of semantics, perhaps.
Well, it was determined that not only the consumption, there are many different levels to this, and there's press going out and letters to property owners that are in the queue, if you will, to go out, explaining the need for the rate changes. And because of the different levels, we just made it as simple as possible for those to understand, which includes an across-the-board one rate change. The complexity issues related to not only what the rate study group are working on, but the issues within the Abrahams report reflects the idea of, you know, a flat rate, you've heard this, a additional service rate, a fee, ready to serve. So all of those different components are being worked on now by the group. And again, by raising just one portion of that and not all of the, excuse me, the levels in the rate would not provide a sufficient debt payment for the future.
But again, we're planning on adopting this budget with this in here, which then dictates we go and change the code to follow this, and then
make an amendment to it.
Later have a second amendment to it later.
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause it's just, my recollection of the process is we usually, when we adopt it, often we would amend the code that same night. But now we're not going to do that. We're going to do that at the regular meeting after
I
the
think
workshop.
Glenn's got a workshop at our April workshop, drawing up an ordinance, and then we'd vote on it the April 15th. And who knows, by April 15th, we may have the working group done.
Well, and I would consider this to be an interim rate, and that would be reflected in the ordinance.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions? Anybody else on the budget?
No, I'm pleased to see these, the two beach compliance officers will be available for the season, as well as the 8 additional police officers, to certainly hope to dispel any further perceptions that our city is not as safe as we can possibly make it. And for the compliance officers, I just got another phone call yesterday from folks actually imploring that we be a little more rigid in the way we monitor dogs on the beach during the season. So I don't know if anybody else ever hears that, but I hear it periodically, and maybe this will help out that situation.
It has to help out the situation, because with 33 seasonal officers, I wouldn't expect anything less. And keep in mind, you know, we don't have 33 seasonal officers working at the same time. So they have shift work just like the regular police officers do. They have days off just like the regular police officers do. And they're also not trained. They don't carry service weapons, and they're certainly trained, but I mean, they're not regular police officers, so they're limited to what they can do. They can certainly advise someone to take down a tent, remove the dog from the beach, and issue warnings. But you know, I think their presence alone, and again, we need to keep in mind we are friendly and safe and clean. So we don't want to saturate the boardwalk and the beach with seasonal police officers. They will be visible, and they will be working toward that end. of enforcement.
Right, and I'm really glad to hear you put it in the terms of we shouldn't expect anything less other than that compliance. So this should help immensely. Thank you.
And as we all know, and we've heard, perception is, you know, so important, and especially in a resort community. And you know, my feeling is having more and more people around, so that perception of the clean, safe, friendly, I think is going to be important in the long run. And so I think this is great that we're able to put in these people, and I think, you know, obviously we'll get some kind of results by the end of the summer. If we need more, excuse me, if we need less, whatever. But I think this is very important because there are so many people that are here for those 4 months of the summer and on the boardwalk and on the beach. And, you know, I've, you know, pleasantly seen, you know, some of these officers, whether it's at nighttime or in the daytime, riding their bicycles through my neighborhood. And you know, it kind of feels good because 5 years ago, I don't remember ever seeing anybody around the neighborhoods. They were on the boardwalk or on Rehoboth Avenue, but I think this makes people feel better. And again, perception is reality, really. If there's nothing else from you, so I guess we're on for this afternoon to vote. And again, we will have a 5th commissioner this afternoon. And before I adjourn this, is there anybody that would like to speak? This is our last budget meeting. If not, come on up, Walter. But Alex, Carol, whoever, will start some meetings.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hanopen Avenue. This is the first time at all on the agendas or the meeting that you've asked the public if they'd like to speak.
We did it for you, Walter. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.